I was making the point a moment ago that deporting people who were shown to have been here illegally was running as high as 15,000 a year back in 2012. That number has plummeted over the course of the last few years. A lot of it, I think, in the wake of the Windrush scandal, the Windrush row. But what is Priti Patel to do now? Because it's pretty clear that large numbers are coming from Afghanistan, and we're going to accept large numbers from Afghanistan. But that of itself is going to put much more pressure on cross-channel movements, which have been quiet for the last 2 weeks because of the unseasonal weather. But isn't it completely unacceptable that not a single one of 12,500 people has been deported back to France?
Yes, thank you, Nigel. First of all, you've got to go back to the 1990s to understand why people are not being deported. Back in the 1990s, the European Union, when we were members, centralised an asylum system, as you know, and you'll be familiar, Nigel, having worked in the European Union, what the Dublin Convention system. Yep. You'll be familiar with that.
Yep.
Now, under that convention, if you're fingerprinted in a member state of the Refugee Convention, then if you're later fingerprinted in another country under the Eurodac system, the old Eurodac system, you can be removed back to the first point where you entered, where you could have claimed asylum. Now, we can't do that anymore because we're not members of the European Union. So the only way they can remove people if they're not recognised as genuine refugees. And Priti Patel's premise is this, that if you're not claiming asylum in the first country that you go to, you can't be a genuine refugee because genuine refugees would immediately claim asylum. Unfortunately, the statistics don't bear that out because 50% of appeals are allowed by the court, where the Home Office deem people not to be genuine refugees. So her initial premise is all wrong in any case. Then you have an unaccompanied children. We cannot remove them. We simply can't do it because we have a duty under the Borders Act to make sure that they're cared for. And we also have a duty under the Children's Act. Doesn't matter if you're a refugee, you have status or not. Every council has a duty under the Children's Act to care for children. And we simply cannot remove them until they're 18. The final problem is where to remove them to. If France won't accept them, the only place they can go is back to their home country. Well, most of them don't have any travel documents, no passports. Yeah, so I'm afraid Priti Patel is telling talkies.
And that, of course, is quite deliberate, isn't it? And I have a sense, yes. I have a sense, Ivon, that within a few weeks, when we do get some better weather and when very big numbers start to cross the channel again, that everyone that comes will say they've come from Afghanistan, which will, of course, compound the problem. But on the Human Rights Act, and that's still, we've got Brexit, but we are still part of the European Convention on Human Rights. It isn't just those crossing the channel without documents we're struggling to remove. We've even seen plane loads of people who've been convicted of criminal offences in this country. And when we try and deport them, we find there are lawyers doing their best to stop that from happening. And I was amazed to see today that we now have something like 11,000 foreign criminals, people who've committed crimes, some of them very serious in this country, and they're out there now freely walking the streets of Britain. Isn't it time we re-examined the ECHR?
No, it isn't. I don't believe that. Oh, look, do you know who drafted the ECHR, Nigel?
I don't care that it was British people. We had a lot of very misguided British people back.
We drafted it.
Yeah, I know, and we joined the European Union. We got lots of things wrong in the past.
You and I have had discussions many times on LBC on this particular point. This is the thing. When you're looking at family life, it's very complex because it's not just the individual you're talking about. You're talking about the extended family. It's what's called composite rights. And so when somebody's gone to prison, has done their time, and has come out, paid their dues to society, and is no longer a risk to society, then why should they be separated from their families? That's the point. And so that's what the courts look at. Is it proportionate? Now, look, I accept there are some people that they're a risk to this country, and quite rightly we should deport them. I think that's absolutely right. I think serious sexual offences, those sorts of offences, we have to draw a red line somewhere where it's unacceptable. But the Home Office simply want to remove you for the most erroneous crime, anything which carries more than 12 months prison sentence.
Well,
there's an automatic right to deport that person.
But that seems reasonable. I put it to you, that seems reasonable to most people.
Well, it would do until you start looking at the complexity of relationships and the effect that it has on the other family members. So I asked you this question before on LBC. If your daughter was married to a refugee, let's say, who committed several shopliftings, and he's been then sent to prison for more than 12 months, and you've got grandchildren, would you accept your grandchildren to live without their father?
Well, I'd be pretty appalled that a son-in-law who had come into this country...
We're talking about the grandchildren, not the son-in-law.
Well, I'm saying this.
That's the complexity.
I understand this. I understand that it's complexity, but I would just argue this. We open our arms up very generously to people from all around the world, and if they abuse that trust, I don't think they should be here. But finally, Ivon, back on the English Channel, is there anything that Priti Patel can do to reverse the tide?
She can. What she needs to do is to enter into a treaty and a bucket full of load of cash. Because the only thing the French will understand is we pay for it. And we're going to have to enter into an international treaty with the EU similar to the Dublin Convention. So I'm afraid they've got us over a barrel now because they're so upset about us leaving the EU. They're very slow to enter into these treaties. So it's going to be a challenge for Priti Patel.
It's going to be a challenge, absolutely. No, I do agree with that. It's going to be a challenge. The alternative, of course, is that you just tow boats back to Boulogne and Calais harbours, and that may get the French to the negotiating table a little bit more quickly. That's
been discussed. And what will happen is, what if the French then tow them back? So what you'll have is boat people going backwards and forwards, being towed to and fro. I don't think that's the way we want to be shown in the international community. I think we're worth more than that.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.